What's going on, guys, and welcome to the Covenant Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Sturtzbaugh, and joining me today is
Pastor Mike,
Bailey Garman,
Lance Friday.
And we've got a really exciting topic. First, I just want to say Lance, he is our new student pastor, and so he might be on here a little more often, so we're excited for that. Yeah. And just a bit of housekeeping. Like always, go back and check out our other podcast. This is episode 15, so we have a lot of great content in the past. We have 14 weeks worth, pretty much? Yeah, 14 weeks worth. And so, go check that out. The last two, the women's ministry came on and kind of took over the podcast, and they talked about some really, really relevant topics to anything right now, to comparing yourself to others. That one's called The Comparison Trap. I think that's 14. But also, like always, if you guys want us to talk about anything on this podcast, you can always email covenantchurchnc1@gmail.com. And now, getting to our topic. This is a pretty exciting one. Mike, you were the one who kind of approached me about it, and then Bailey approached Mike about it. And so, how about you just give us a little breakdown of what we're going to be talking about today?
Well, actually, the reason we're doing this is Bailey. So that's why she's here. No, not sorry. This is a good topic. So years ago, this started this thought process. Basically, ultimately what we're going to get to in a minute is how does the church stay in contact with our kids after they graduate from youth, and move on to other parts of life, whether it's school or work or whatever. And so I went to this conference like years ago. It was like when I first started youth ministry, which was a long, long time ago. Lance, don't laugh. But and they had this. Actually, the topic of this particular speech was the broken pipeline, and it was kind of interesting. They had this picture. You have to go with me on this. It's a picture of like this pipeline that had oil running through it, and it had like children's ministry and then youth ministry, and then it got to the college ministry, and it had a big hole in it, and all the oil was flowing out of the pipeline. And so the whole point of doing this particular conference was to challenge us to maybe try to engage our college kids, because statistics are crazy about how many kids end up pulling kind of away from their faith or active in the church and different things like that. And so the way that we got started on this again now is because, and we'll talk about past experiences, and Lance can talk about what he thinks it's going to look like for him. Mm-hmm. But about maybe 2 months ago, I guess, Bailey, I oftentimes will just throw stuff out there on Sunday mornings when I'm preaching, and I was actually approaching the topic of how many young people we were losing and the challenges of that. And so Bailey, I really appreciate it. She called me the next day and she said, it's one thing to just like talk about this and make bold statements about the negative side of that. But what are we really doing as the body of Christ? What's the church doing to alleviate that problem? How can we actually make any kind of judgment on that until we're doing what we're called to do in that area? So Bailey actually springboarded us into this conversation because I've been thinking about it ever since. I really appreciated her. I've known Bailey since she was really young and close with her family, but for somebody, her age, just graduated from college, got her nursing thing. Yay, she passed. To call me, and we talked probably 45 minutes to an hour on the phone that day about some good stuff, some stuff that she challenged me on, challenged the church on. And so that's how we came to this. So.
Yeah, and so moving forward with that just kind of goes into the question, who do you guys think is responsible for checking in on this group? I mean, ultimately, I think it's a pretty simple question. But maybe what ways can we do that, or what's like kind of a philosophy behind it, why we do it?
Bailey, you go for it.
Okay. So, I don't know that answer because like he was talking about that broken pipeline, there's assigned people to each group, but what about that age group? And I was like, honestly, if I have to be the one to start it, like text these kids or like whatever, if I have to be the one that starts to organize it, then I'm cool with it. But I don't exactly know that answer. But I feel like.
Well, that's why we're talking about it,
Yeah. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, because we don't know. But if I got to be the one to do it, sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the statistics, and then it depends on which ones you read. Some say 80, some say 90% of kids leave the faith in their first year after leaving high school. That's a scary number to me, and so we probably need to pay attention to that number. You know, we probably need to start doing something better than we did before. I know, and I'll turn it over to Lance. Maybe he has some ideas about it in just a second. But I know when I was in youth ministry, which was 20 years ago, I really focused on that a lot at the time. But I would find myself really being good at it for about a month or two, and then when kids, I didn't hear back from them like I should, you know. And it's not to say that there weren't some that I've always stayed in contact with since then, but those aren't the problem. The ones that are harder to reach and stay a hold of are the ones that's the problem. And so sometimes when they didn't respond back to me like I thought they should, it's almost like I felt rejected. And plus I had a whole youth group over here that I need to take care of. So I would just drop the ball on it sometimes, quite honestly. So, and I don't know. You guys are younger and just finished college. You know, what was your experience? You know, Lance. You know,
I'm an old guy.
No, you're young.
I think for me personally, just growing up in my church back when we talking about 10 years ago. I came into college without any like youth group experience or whatsoever. So I'm looking at it at a personal lens, and I asked myself this question: so who is responsible? I think we're all called to be disciples. So you think of that mentorship that comes with being a disciple. And so as youth leaders and youth pastor, we got to find a way to tap into those folks. I think jumping in, especially your first year of college, it's a shell shock. You don't know what you're getting into. It's a new world, new atmosphere, and it takes just 1 second of you stepping into temptation for you to fall apart. So it comes just really, when we're in youth, really building that foundation and connecting with some of these schools to get some of our folks connected prior to before they go. And so you have Campus Crusades, you have all those good things, but we just got to do our research and really dig into that best situation for our youth, so that the outcome of when they get there it's already taken care of, and God's presence is going to continue with them throughout. So it starts early if you're looking at juniors, seniors in school. How can we connect with them? How can we get them to connect to the schools that they're at? What are some recommendations of churches, youth groups, or even adult groups that's going to keep them founded in their faith? And so that's very important early on, is just really just finding that connection point.
Yeah, I think a good point to hit on too is just like, even when we talk about those juniors and seniors, like the relationship between them being strong for accountability in college and stuff like that. And so I think people our age, or people who have like left or who are recently out of college, or still young, man, you're still young, because we know what they're dealing with. We know the struggles that they're dealing with. And so I do think that kind of people our age are responsible for it. Not to say that you aren't, but
No, I get it. It's really changed a lot since
you can relate.
I was there, and when I was a youth pastor, it's changed a lot since too.
Yeah. So I mean, this next question, it kind of goes over what we kind of went over. I mean, what role does the church have? But before we get there, I do kind of just want to say I did have something on my heart about this. When I went to a church named Biltmore up when I was at college, and we Biltmore College church, and when we had a lot of mentors, and the thing they did, it was like, you're always making disciples, always making disciples, always making disciples. And so what my mentor always told me, he was like, the college campus is probably the one place in the world that you're going to be able to impact the most people from the most like different areas around, like, because there were people from Sweden that I knew, Germany, like stuff like that. And he was like, imagine if you affected those people and those people went and affected other people. And so that's just how important this is. And that's, I think that's really, really important for, like you just said, to equip them to go be that, if he or she is just that one thing that just starts that spark along, I mean, all of North Carolina or wherever you're going to school. But, but like I said, what role does the church have?
To me, the problem isn't kids like you or Lance. Like I knew Lance in college. Bailey, even though she went to school, she still stayed to some degree connected to our church. You got connected with Biltmore. So the problem is not the kids that you get connected to people. The problem is the ones that are out there on that island that feel like they're not connected. How do we have a voice in their life to encourage that and inspire that? You know, you guys know if you've been in youth ministry for any amount of time, when they get to 11th and 12th grade in high school, they're hard to get in youth group because they got their license, they got a million things going on. And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, and y'all can correct me on this if I'm wrong, a lot of kids, when they get to college, are glad they don't have those boundaries anymore. They're glad that nobody's telling them what to do anymore. And they don't want to be affected anymore by the church. So it is, and I know that sounds like a cop-out on my part, but I'm just telling you from my experience back then, I had kids that didn't want me telling them what to do anymore. They've been told what to do spiritually for long enough, and they wanted to make their own way and find their own path. And so maybe Bailey can add it. Being just graduated last year, her experience on how she stayed connected, and maybe it's hard to answer these kind of questions because maybe she had some friends that didn't. I don't want to call out anybody's name or judge anybody because that's not what we're doing here today. But there are friends that we had that maybe didn't stay as connected as we did. Why?
Yeah, I think this kind of like relates to the first question just for me, because I think the relationships that I had within youth were like so impactful on me. Like I had youth leaders who checked in on me, who like continually pursued me to make sure I was okay and made sure that I still felt like, they were literally showing me the love of God. They were being that example for me, even though I wasn't, maybe I shouldn't say this, but even though I wasn't totally engaged here after that year of high school, like my last year of high school, I kind of felt like, I had a disconnect from all my friends because all my friends went away to college and I didn't do that. I stayed and went to community because I was not a good student. I wouldn't have done well at all. And my parents kind of saw that and knew that. But I think the role of our church is just to continue, like I said, showing those kids, even if you go away, when you come back, I'm here for you. We've got you. We're here waiting for you with open arms. We still love you. And to know that if they mess up or whatever they do, they have that person there that's rooting for them all along the way. And I think just creating those relationships, like you said, when they're juniors and seniors, making sure that they know, it's not just your parents that are there for you. Like if you need me, you've got me and I'm in your corner. I'm rooting for you. I think that's really important. Like not just specifically our youth leaders, because like you said, you've got your whole youth group that you're working towards and you're working on and you're being there for those kids. But I think maybe even having people in our church that are strong families that are supporting these kids, just I think continually pursuing them, even like you said, you feel like you get rejected. But I think just knowing and having that person there for you lets that kid know no matter what I do, I've got them. They've got me and they're there for me. So I think that's just like an important thing for our church to remember for our students.
Yeah.
It's that prodigal son image.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Knowing that college is going to have its own challenges, own battles, but knowing that the church, wide open arms, is going to be there and collect them. And God is always going to be there. So just praying for them, I think it's going to be the best thing, even though if they step out on faith, is we're not quitting. We're going to get you.
Yep.
So continue to pray, continue to be there. I know one of my best friends throughout college, he battled some difficulties in his life. So he struggled. It was a battle for him, and he's still battling to this day. But if it wasn't for him, I think in my junior year, may have been my last year of college. But, I mean, he pulled me in because he was battling so much, and I saw that example. I know somebody said that you talk about your friends and people you surround yourself with, it's that. So we got to make sure that we keep them accountable and keep just pushing them through. Because if you don't have that accountability, you don't have that partner to kind of step with you in faith, it's hard. It is definitely hard. But, yeah, truly, I think it is knowing that they may step away. But knowing that you're continually praying for them, continually just reaching out, showing your support, just knowing that you're there for them, I think that means a lot.
So what do you think is the best accountability tool? Is it some guy that's 30 couple years old that used to be your youth pastor, or if your friends that are 19 years old that are with you in college? I mean, which one of those is a better accountability partner? You know what I'm saying? It's like the kids, in other words, let me speak from experience. The young people that I saw leave our youth group when I was in youth ministry that stayed in that focused place, man, they were surrounded by young people that were holding them accountable. It wasn't just my voice or their parents' voice. It was like, I know you did that. I know you did that. I know you did that, you know. But yet you have friends maybe that didn't. You know, there are people that went to your youth group at Covenant Church that were in there for 6-7 years with you that just fell off the wagon, so to speak, when they went to college. Why didn't you? You know, I guess, why didn't you? Why didn't you? You know?
I think another thing, even just to say with the accountability, the thing is, I think you have to teach them to want to be accountable.
Absolutely.
Because I could have done so many things. Because I went to college with some of my friends that went here, that they just happened to go there. I could have done whatever I wanted, and they would have never known. But I was like, you're still keeping me accountable.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not. You have to truly be transparent and accountable. And that's hard for a lot of kids because it's you're saying, hey, I just did this wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think that just comes all back to a relationship. Like if I left for college and you texted me and said, hey, how's everything going? And I'm just like, everything's going great. Like I'm getting in my word every day. I'm praying, but I didn't do any of that. And I'm out here hanging out with the wrong people and everything like that. So that's where that relationship has to connect. And so
it's all about discipline,
Yeah.
just self-discipline. I think a lot of what our life expectations or future holds is really just our discipline and faith.
yeah.
So we got to make sure that we're grounded. The support has to be there, but if that person's not disciplined, then it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
So you look at the Malachi and just being disciplined and all those great things, being committed.
Mhm.
I think if you're 100% committed, even though you're going to fail, we're all failed, but we still got to make sure that we're committed after we fail and get back on our feet and get back to finding and discovering who God is. So it definitely is the relationship. I think that's very, very important as we look at our younger generations and as they venture off into college. It's relationship, accountability, but also being self-disciplined as well, too. So which
Just
is,
the total foundation,
Yeah.
which that foundation is made at home. So leads us to our next question. What does mom and dad have? What role do they play in all of this?
I can start.
You
Okay.
can do that.
I can because
She
I
told us
I have
before we
notes on
started.
this.
She
So-
talked to her parents.
Yeah, I talked to my parents before this. So I think the biggest role is for parents just to not be afraid to say no. I think that's super important because they have that perspective that this student who's 18 years old, who sees all of her friends going away to college, and your parents are like, I just don't think that you're ready. You know, being able to say, be their parent and not their friend. Know that they might get hurt, they might be sad, you might not be their friend for a little bit, and they might even feel alone. Like I did. I felt like I was left out. Like all my friends had this different experience from me. But knowing, you know, keeping your child's best interest at heart, knowing that you're just protecting them and you're being that safeguard for them, because going away to college at 18, I could not imagine what I would have been like.
Your brain's not even fully developed at that point.
Yeah, I'm just being completely honest. I probably wouldn't sit here today for sure talking about all this, but I would definitely have a different perspective because I was not ready. I didn't have like that.
Maturity, basically.
Yeah, and I wasn't as dedicated and like as solidified in my faith as I should have been to be put in that area to be questioned or to question things. Because I am sure that I would have had a different perspective right now than I do because of my experience. So, yeah, my parents were right.
You guys hear that?
Hey, said that. Joe, Sonia, did you hear that? She said you were right.
Yeah, thanks.
But see, if we make it even more personal, you know, is sometimes because we're connected on social media platforms now, we have kids that this is one of the springboards for our conversation. We have kids that I love with my whole heart that they put stuff out there that I believe is even against the Word of God, you know, now. And it's not me being judgmental or mean about those people. I felt like even when I was in youth ministry, if a kid fell completely off the wagon, if they got drunk every night and had sex with everybody at their whole campus, which none of that really ever happened. I'm just throwing it out there. I would always love them back. I would never, because I made a lot of mistakes in my 19 to 22-year-old years. I've never been judgmental, but I think there's almost an asserted effort with some people that leave the church to make sure they're not connected to the church anymore, you know, and I find that heartbreaking. I probably shed more tears in my years of ministry over that group of people than in any other, and so I don't know. I don't know how we're going to fix it with 4 people talking today. How do we reach that group? You know, what did we do wrong, or did we do anything wrong? Yeah, why do we have some people that leave the church and they're passionate and they stay connected, and why do we have some that almost are against everything we stand for a year later? That kills my heart.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I add something
Yeah,
to that?
please
Okay.
jump in.
So I think, like, to go on to that, this kind of relates to the next question that we have, but I'm going to go ahead and
Sorry.
talk about it. No, it's fine. But I think especially, like, those kids that go away and want to, like, nothing to do with the church, have no ties, whatever, that goes back to the foundation that we're building with these kids. Because if you have that strong foundation and you are sure and you are certain in what you believe in, you're going to hold that true no matter what. And I think that goes back to where we start with our kids, where we are with our youth, what we talk to our youth about. Like, I'm just going to give an example. So I think, like, one of the most, like, impactful moments of my life was, like, these youth conferences. But when you go to these youth conferences, you're getting, like, what I feel is that you're getting literal, like, the word. It's not these fluffy stories that make you feel good. It's, like, the truth. They are just, like, because they have those 2 nights to make it happen. And they are, like, pouring their heart and soul out into getting this point across to you of, like, whatever they're preaching about, whether it be, salvation, what it is, what it means. They're putting every effort that they have to proving that point to that kid that this is real. This is, like, the life that, you know, we want you to live. This is why. This is what God did for you. You know, like, and I think just establishing that strong foundation of their salvation, of knowledge, just general knowledge of the truth and what is the truth, kind of is important for that kid to know.
Got a little timer on. Timer going
No,
on.
and I think that's true. You know, but if I asked, you know, y'all 3, because y'all are kind of in the same generation as from my perspective, you know, like, what was the one thing that kept you in that place of faithfulness? What if you could attribute it? One thing, I'm like, yours may be a conference, but you also have mentioned your parents. If I asked you, Lance, why did you end up coming out of college a guy on fire for God and not living like a hellion drug addict? You know what I'm saying? Drug dealer, whatever. You know, why? Who was that one group? What influenced you the most? And then Bailey can go, and then you can go. Really, you know.
I think the most influential person in my life is my grandmother. I think she represented the true love of Christ, and that made me want him even more. So I always looked up to her. As you may or may not know, growing up, it was my mom and then my stepfather. Loved my stepfather to death, but it wasn't he wasn't my real father. And so you always have that bond with your real father, but if your real father's not there and not present, then who's that next person you're gonna look up to? And for me, that was always my grandmother. I think she had that loving heart and care for so many people that wanted me to love just like her. And I know she had that deep relationship with Christ, and so that made me want him even more. But knowing that in college, I wanted to do my best because she would call me daily, just kind of check up on me, see how I was doing. If I ever need anything, she would always do whatever she had to do to make ends meet.
That's that accountability thing too.
Yep.
And so she was always there for me, and that made me just want to do my best for her, knowing that she was my true role model in life, and so that was my go-to person. But I also look back, even on a group setting when we had Group 212. I think it was one of the first groups for that 18 to 24-year-old age. I know we had Andrew, we had Damien, Thomas, Alex. I mean, you had a bunch of folks that were a lot older than me. Not a lot older, but a couple ages older than me. But they stayed true to the word. They went through their college experience, and so now they're feeding into me. And so they're really giving me that hope and experience to really just look at them as examples and see where I need to be and where I need to head in my faith. And so I think the more you surround yourself with folks that are just really just that true faithfulness. I mean, you have to be careful with really just relying on people, but if you see their heart, you see their vision, and they speak it, I think it's easy to jump on board with them. And so that group, especially Group 212 with those folks, I mean, that's outside of my grandma, that was my second impact folks because I needed that male inspiration to kind of push me forward. So.
And Bailey, I want you to answer the same, but I want to tell them who Group 212 for our church years ago was a group that we purposely started for that college age ministry that it worked for a while, and it's not going as well as now as it was then. But we need to get back to it. So I want to ask Bailey that same question. I know you're in charge of answering questions. But what's the one influence that kept you in this place of faithfulness?
I think mine would be the worship team, just because, like I said, I kind of felt like I didn't have a place necessarily. I was done with youth. 212 wasn't like a huge, like, I think, like, I knew 2 people that went. That was about it. Yeah. And I was super involved in the worship team, and it's just that added layer of accountability. You know, being up on the platform, you are held to a higher standard because
that's good.
You need to be living that example. And I think just being called to that, like having that added layer of a challenge, like that's my expectation. And I need to be doing whatever I need to do to live my life the way that I need to be living to represent, well, one, obviously Jesus and the love that he has for everybody else, but also for me and my church. I'm representing Covenant on that platform, so I need to be conscious and smart about what I do and how I live and stay engaged, stay involved, stay in the Word. And so, yeah, that's really what impacts me.
So for Lance, his grandmother, and some older dudes from his church. For you, obviously you mentioned your parents, the influence, and secondly, the worship team that you were involved in, that you became a part of and focused in, got accountability. So why did you come out of college a guy that was faithful to the Lord?
I think I had a really just a good group of guys that I was around. So accountability for sure. When I first went to college, I went a little crazy. So I kind of stayed away from those guys, and then after my second year, kind of matured a little bit, and then was kind of like, what were you doing? And they were actually the guys to call me out on it, which is the funny thing. And so yeah, they just having a strong relationship with them and growing with them and being with them week in and week out. That was probably the biggest factor for me. Along with, props to Aaron. We were really close, building a foundation for me. He mentored me in like the leadership program thing that we did, and but I don't want to leave anyone out, but probably also my parents. My parents were always there, and my dad always led by example. I know we talked about that in the last podcast, but so yeah, probably those 3 things, but most of all, the accountability and surrounding myself with people.
The right people when you got there.
Yeah, because temptation when you're up there is easy to fall into. It's easy to fall into.
Western Carolina. Appalachian State.
Good Cats.
Lenore Ryan.
Go Bears.
All right. I think we're actually going to stop for right now because we think we're going to run out of time. And so, like always, we'll see you guys